This is my childhood friend Susi, and she was only 16 years old when she died. She was born on March 22nd, 1983 and died on January 25th, 2000. Susi was 8 years old and I was 10 when we both met in front of the elevators the first time. Those elevators belonged to a building where she lived with her mom on the 7th floor, while I lived with my mom on the 14th floor. Susi and I, as well as our mothers, became very close friends. Living in the same building was great. We had constantly sleepovers and we were able to celebrate Christmas and New Year's Eve together. In secret, we stayed awake at night and watched horror movies, what I still do to this day, just to keep the tradition alive. When I was 13 years old, we left this building and moved to another neighborhood, while Susi and her mom stayed a little bit longer there. We didn't go to the same school, that's why we didn't see each other regularly at this time, but as soon Susi and her mom moved very close to our new neighborhood, we saw each other again. And while we both hung out together, we never really saw other people. We always hung out alone, and that's how we grew up, because we could just be ourselves together. At some point, she had a school internship. This is a normal thing to do in the 9th grade of German high school system. This is where Susi met her first big love. His name was Marco, and he was already 23 years old. At the beginning, everything seemed to be okay. We even hung out together. Then all of a sudden, we stopped hanging out. So I kept living my life until Susi's mom contacted me and told me about Susi's situation. She seemed to be stuck in an abusive relationship. Susi and Marco abused a medication called Tramal. Susi's mom was not okay with that, so both decided to move to Marco's parents. Susi's mom, her name is Martina, found a letter in Susi's room after they left. This letter was scary. Marco wrote about his anger issues towards Susi because of her behavior. He didn't like how she talked, and he didn't even want to let her go to school anymore because she could fall for somebody else. And he wrote about that both should die so they can stay together forever. Susi's mom, Martina, took this letter and brought it to the police, but they didn't do anything. She tried to go to the youth office, the Child Protective Service, but they also didn't help. They even told her to allow Susi to live with Marco and his parents, just so the mother-daughter relationship could maybe work out in the future. All of a sudden, while Martina explained me everything, the phone rang. It was Susi. She was ice cold. She sounded like a machine. She called her mom not mom anymore. She called her by her last name, like she was a stranger. When I talked to Susi, she told me that she doesn't need friends anymore. In the background, we heard Marco's voice whispering into Susi's ear. After that, I don't know how much time went by, but Martina called me suddenly and told me that Susi was back. Susi took a chance while Marco was not around her to call her mom and was able to run away from him. When I saw her the first time, I realized how thin she got, and her hair was very long. We just hugged each other for a long time. Then she told me what he did to her, and I won't tell you all the details, but he definitely abused her emotionally, physically, and psychologically. She knew he wouldn't leave her alone. At some point, she even told me which song she wants to be played at her funeral. We then cut her hair shorter, and after Christmas, '99, she decided to go into a clinic to help herself, and she didn't want to go back to Marco again, ever. Only a few people were allowed to visit her in this clinic. She was treated for her depression, and she started eating again. However, she called me one day and was panicked because Marco's sister found her in the clinic even though nobody was supposed to know where she was. She told me that she thinks Marco will find her now, but the clinic was informed, so we all assumed she was safe there. Susi was able to leave the clinic on weekends and we went out. Little did I knew that this will be the last time I will see her alive. On Monday, January 24th, 2000, she called her mom one last time. She told her about plans for the next weekend because she was supposed to leave the hospital for good and wanted to go play dart and pool with us. Then, together with her roommate, from her clinic station, she went back to the building, and on her way, people told her that a guy was looking for her. I assume Susi knew exactly who it was. Susi's room in this building was upstairs. While Marco was looking for her and even got her room number, Susi was hiding underneath the stairs with her roommate until she thought Marco left the building. After that, Susi went into her room, but Marco followed a few minutes later. They said there was no talking, and while another girl just entered the room, Marco shot Susi 2 times in her head. She broke down immediately. After that, Marco left the building, drove to a nearby gas station, bought himself a Coke, and asked for the bathroom key. He stayed in there for a while, until he shot himself in the head. But he survived. The media said that Marco planned to kill Susi. A few days before the tragedy, Susi wrote Marco a letter, and she was very strict that she didn't want to come back to him, but it was also a nice letter. He just lost it because he knew he won't be able to control her anymore. The police found a letter on him as well, where he described that he didn't want to kill, but he wanted to stay together with Susi forever. And he also wanted to show Susi's mother, Martina, that she's not supposed to deal with her kids like she does. And this makes absolutely no sense to me because I know that Martina and Susi had a good relationship to each other. When Martina arrived at the hospital, Susi was connected to machines, and she couldn't even touch her daughter because of evidence reasons. Doctors waited to declare Susi brain dead, and they waited until the 25th of January. Martina decided to donate Susi's organs to help others. Later in the day, however, Martina got informed that it's not allowed because it's a murder case. When Martina asked whether it's okay to say goodbye to her daughter while she is still laying on the machines, the doctors told her that it's too late. Susi was already at the autopsy. Not even after the autopsy, Martina was allowed to say goodbye to Susi. She never saw her again. The public prosecutors wanted to bring Marco to trial, but he was too sick, and he claimed that he can't remember the last 2 years of his life, so it actually never came to a trial. To this day, 20 years later, there was no justice for Susi or her mom Martina. Since 3 years, Martina doesn't get any information about Marco and whether he is able to go to trial. She can't afford an attorney who would be able to help her in this situation. The clinic didn't take any responsibility for not keeping Susi safe. They even told the media that Susi never mentioned that she was threatened by her ex-boyfriend. They at least learned one thing out of the situation, and now there is a station especially for young women who are threatened by their abusive partners. In my opinion, Susi and her mother are seen and treated like second-class citizens. By telling this story, I hope to spread any awareness of how people are treated. Martina is completely left alone with the whole situation, with her trauma and her grief. Susi, you were so young, but so brave. One of the bravest people I've ever met in my life, and we all make sure that you will never be forgotten.
Susi, denke viel an dich, lebe unser